Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen demands to use the family property for her upcoming wedding. I'm 25 and my sister is 29. I also have a younger sister who's 8. When I was 14, my mom sent me to live with her parents. Her excuse was that they needed me to help out. I believe she just didn't want to deal with a growing male teen. My grandparents owned an amazing property in the mountains that has an amazing view. We also have some horses and other critters. They were also quite wealthy as well. They both passed away 4 years ago, a month apart. They gave me the property because I would appreciate and respect it more, while my mom and sisters got money and other assets, overall valued it more than the property. In the past 4 years, I turned part of the property into a venue for mainly weddings. Grandparents knew of this idea and they thought it was a good one. We are busy and usually booked about 8 months out. My sister got engaged 1.5 years ago and said she wants to get married at the property. I said yes, just let me know the date as soon as possible so I can make sure that it's booked. I never got a date. I followed up several times and kept asking her and she would just brush me off. 2 weeks ago, I got the wedding invitation, stating the property is the location and the date, which is September of this year. I immediately called her to say we're already booked for that date and we can't accommodate her. Well, now her, my mom, other family, my partner's family, as well as other flying monkeys have been blowing up on me. They are also calling and writing reviews for my business. I asked them to stop and I called my sister, telling her that literally all she had to do was tell me when she wanted her date so I could block it and I would take care of everything else. She went off on how I'm ruining her day. It's our family's property, how she already sent out the invitations and couldn't go back now. I should tell the other people to cancel. They've been on the books for over a year now, and I actually like them. Family is more important. After the last big blow-up, I started communicating strictly through the business, using our recorded line as well as email. I suggested 3 other dates around the same time, but that's not good enough. I'm being resentful and a jerk. ETA, most likely Monday, I plan on getting in contact with the couple and seeing if I can take them to dinner or something to explain the situation. I'm thinking of giving them a discount, getting a guest list, and being tight on security on our part. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to name my business for reasons. Thanks for the offers of writing good reviews, but I can't accept it. I like to earn everything I have or am given. I've made a lot of contacts in this business, and I'm now having to call on them to help me out. Just do me a favor. Be kind to everyone. Show love, compassion, and respect. Not the jerk, but your sister is a giant jerk for expecting you to cancel another couple's date for, what? Selfish family? She needed to tell you the date and she didn't. That's on her. Who sends out invitations for a date before even contacting the venue? Not the jerk. I would suggest getting a lawyer involved before your family causes harm to your business. Send them all cease and desist letters. This is your property and business. Do not allow them to discredit it just because they're not getting their way. I'd also put a PSA out that her wedding will not be at your venue. That way a bunch of people don't show up and ruin this other lovely couple's wedding by causing a scene. One thing I've learned is that you never mix family and business. Family will never respect your business because they feel entitled to it. So it's best to only offer family a small discount, but still make them go through all the proper channels or they don't get whatever service you provide. Am I the jerk for expecting my wife to prioritize me on Father's Day instead of going to a funeral? My wife and I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Our 6-year-old is on the spectrum. It goes without saying that this is a very stressful position and neither of us get very much of a break from this. My wife is a stay-at-home mom and I have a full-time job. As happy as our kids make us, I don't think it's selfish for us to both desire breaks. We get them every here and there, but we made a deal to have 2 guaranteed breaks in a year, our birthdays and Mother's and Father's Day. On those days, the one parent takes on the brunt of the burden so the other can get a day to relax. Since our youngest was about 2, we practiced this. I've never failed to give my wife the day off she deserves. I'll schedule her a spa day or something she really wants to do and get her out of the house so she can relax while I'm on daddy duty. Then, when she gets back, our kids give her cards and gifts and we get a meal from her favorite place after they go to bed. My wife has been less consistent and doesn't really do as much as I do for her. The last year, she hasn't really done anything. I typically try not to hold it against her, as it is undoubtedly hard, but it does feel kind of unfair. This Father's Day, I planned something for myself as she made no indication of doing something for me. I warned her a week in advance and she said it was okay. This was until about 3 days ago. My wife's old boss's dad passed. She was invited to the funeral by the boss, and she chose to attend it, which was about 2 hours away. As a result, I had to cancel all of my plans and take care of the kids. She was supposed to be home at around 5 in the evening, but she didn't get home until around 10. The kids were already asleep, and my wife neglected to help them even get a Father's Day card for me. We got into a huge argument when she got back. I told her that I felt like she really dropped the ball on this and didn't give me a break like I usually do for her. She told me that she's home with the kids all day, just about every day, and I only have to help out after work, and as far as she's concerned, I regularly get a break and she doesn't. I told her working isn't a break and that I really was looking forward to today. She said that someone had passed and I was being completely selfish trying to make it about me. I said that it was someone she didn't even know, who was the parent of someone she hasn't seen in over a year, and I didn't think I was being selfish and asking her to prioritize my needs just as a gesture like I do hers. She's been upset at me since, and we're not talking. Am I the jerk? Edit. My wife is not hooking up with her boss. The funeral was real. I dropped her off with some of her old coworkers so they could carpool to the funeral. It was real, and I've seen multiple pictures of the service from multiple Facebook friends of hers, and she was there for longer because the service went longer than expected. I'm going against the grain here, not the jerk. Your wife could have easily gone to the funeral and come home at 5, perhaps brought dinner, taken care of the kids while you relaxed. She also absolutely should have helped the kids make or do something special for you. Old boss's dad, in my funeral book, that does not really justify leaving family for an entire day, driving 4 hours, and ignoring Father's Day. The funeral was just an excuse to get out of the house. You may have bigger issues than missing Father's Day. ETA, tell your wife you would like to do a redo. Pick another Sunday for Father's Day. Maybe she'll actually help the kids do something fun for you. Not the jerk. If a man did this to his wife on Mother's Day, he would get blasted. Exactly. All the "you're the jerk" posts seem to have just seen funeral and completely ignored that it was for her former boss's dad. Plus, she didn't even get him a card. It took about 10 minutes for me and my kids to get a card for my husband for Father's Day. She didn't even do the bare minimum. This is screaming to me that your wife wants adult time. You get to converse with your colleagues every day. She doesn't. She has you to socialize with. And is that it? Does she go out with friends without the kids? To me, this seems like she jumped at the chance to socialize with people she knew and could have adult conversations with. Seriously, think about this and ask her if she's really happy being a stay-at-home mom. She may miss working and the social aspect that comes with it. I think this is an everyone sucks here situation, but really, you both need to communicate better. Every time there's a post on here with a wife or stay-at-home mom with poor behavior and the husband not doing anything wrong, there's always a few comments saying everyone sucks here and they both need to communicate better. You gave no examples of him being a bad communicator. It's all examples of the wife potentially wanting something and her not communicating that she wants it. No jerks here. You aren't wrong for expecting her to plan something on Father's Day, but she's clearly burnt out being a stay-at-home mom. The funeral was for an ex-boss's parent. She didn't need to attend. She saw an opportunity for more downtime, which she desperately needs, and took it. Am I the jerk for leaving my surprise wedding because I felt blindsided? Last week, I, 30 female, was invited to a supposedly fancy party by my longtime boyfriend, Mark, who's 32. We had been dating for 5 years and we had discussed marriage before. There were no immediate plans for a wedding though. Excited about the event, I dressed up in my best attire and arrived at the designated venue. As I entered the grand hall, I was completely taken aback to see all of our family, friends, and acquaintances gathered, eagerly waiting. It turns out, Mark had orchestrated an elaborate surprise wedding for us without my knowledge. Everyone erupted into applause as I stood there, shocked and overwhelmed. I just felt a mix of emotions. While I love Mark and had dreamed of our future together, the idea of getting married without any prior discussion or consent felt like a breach of trust. So I pulled Mark aside and tried to express my concerns and reservations about the surprise wedding. I explained that I wanted a say in the planning process, to be a part of the decision-making, and to have the chance to prepare mentally and emotionally for such a significant milestone in our lives. However, Mark dismissed my concerns, saying that he thought it would be a romantic gesture and that I would be thrilled. In that moment, I faced a difficult choice: go along with the surprise wedding, putting on a smile despite feeling unsettled, or stand up for my autonomy and voice my true feelings. I ultimately made the decision not to proceed with the surprise wedding, much to the disappointment and confusion of our guests. Now I find myself at odds with Mark, our families, and even some of our friends who believe I overreacted and spoiled a beautiful moment. However, I firmly believe that a marriage should be a joint decision with open communication and shared expectations. Everyone's excuse for this is, I have always talked about marrying Mark. And again, the problem isn't marrying him. The problem is not having any say in my wedding. Mark thought I'd appreciate it because I always spoke about how stressful planning a wedding must be. Yes, I think it's stressful. It is, but I'd still like planning one. After this whole ordeal, everyone asked if Mark and I were ending things, and which I replied no. I emphasized towards them and Mark I still wanted to marry him, and most feel like this is making me more of a jerk since I just wasted a perfectly fine wedding. So, am I the jerk for refusing to attend my own surprise wedding, even though it was intended as a romantic gesture? Edit. I love surprises. It's a thing everyone has known me to love. Mark, knowing the fact that I wanted to marry him and that I said wedding planning was stressful, thought a surprise wedding would be perfect. A surprise engagement is bland because it will always be a surprise, but not a wedding. He threw this wedding for the surprise, but explained how in a couple days we could do a courthouse wedding to make it legal. This was his only way to surprise me. I love spontaneity, but legal marriage or not, I want a say in my wedding. To choose the perfect date, to choose my bridesmaids, to pick out my cake. Again, due to these thoughts, everyone thinks I'm the jerk because I could have gone along with the party and do a redo legal wedding. But again, I felt blindsided and confused, so I left. Not the jerk. If he marries you without having to ask you, what else would he do with the same excuse? Surprise, I got the new car we talked about. Oh, you wanted to choose the model? Or have the full experience? Surprise, I got us a house. We talked so much about a new house for us and the kids. We're still having kids, right? I exaggerate, but you get where I'm going. Make sure you keep control over your own life. Not the jerk. I'd also be asking all my family and friends if they knew about this. Who told this man this was a good idea? You didn't overreact. You didn't make a bad call. You didn't do anything wrong. Your response was your body and mind telling you that this was not okay. Anyone who thinks you ruined this is not someone who has your best interests in mind. I don't care if it's your own mother. They do not have your best interests in mind. No jerks here. He did what you kind of said you wanted, but you weren't clear that this wasn't really what you wanted. You didn't want what he did and bailed. I would be curious how Mark feels about all of this. I know you said you wanted to get married in the future, but how about Mark? He must have been terribly hurt and embarrassed. I can't imagine that he's just brushing it off and moving forward like nothing ever happened. I feel very sorry for him. He saved you a year of hassle and probably a small fortune. He tailored an experience very closely to your stated personality. You're going to marry him eventually anyway. Seemed like you're another one of those manipulated by the wedding industrial complex. He's a keeper. You? Maybe not. I'm thinking he's the one who needs to run. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to leave after he found out my mom cuts vegetables for me? I, 30 male, was born with a bone missing in my arm. As a result, I only have one digit. If that wasn't enough, it was in a fixed position with my digit up by my shoulder and the ligament and tendons really didn't develop, so I can't straighten my arm. My parents were great at making sure I would be independent and able to live by myself. Some things I physically can't do, like tie shoelaces. For the most part, I can cut anything by myself, but I struggle with doing fine dices. Every other month or so, my mom will finally cut some veggies for me, usually onion, celery, and carrots, so that I can freeze them. I asked her to do this when I lived on my own for the first time, because I was fed up of sending onions flying all over my kitchen if I used a knife, or it turning to mush if I used the food processor. When my girlfriend, who's 28, started dating me, she told me that she couldn't cook, but also didn't have an interest in learning to cook. I said this was fine because I like to cook, so when she moved in, I became the de facto cook. She has never expressed a problem with my mom cutting vegetables for me. She actually preferred it, as she has said she couldn't cut them finely for me. Her brother, who's 35, is currently staying with us and has been for the last 4 weeks since his ex threw him out because of how lazy he is. He doesn't have a job. I don't think he has for the 3 years I've been with girlfriend, nor is he looking for one. He also doesn't help around the house. We were his last resort because no one else would take him in, not even their parents. My mom comes over yesterday with the freezer bags of diced veggies for me. Brother-in-law was annoyed when he saw my mom with the veggies because that morning, girlfriend and I had spoken to him about not being so lazy and getting a job because he's an adult and needs to stop relying on people like a kid. Girlfriend's words, not mine. He was annoyed because he saw me as being a hypocrite because I was getting my mom to cut things for me like a kid. After my mom left, he accused her of coddling me and treating me like I'm incompetent. For me, this was a crossed line because this is something I physically can't do and my mom is just being helpful. I told brother-in-law that I wanted him to leave and that he was no longer welcome in my home. Girlfriend moved in with me to my house. Girlfriend was upset that I asked her brother to leave as I made a decision without her input and she left with him. Since brother-in-law and girlfriend have left, I have texts from him and their family accusing me of being a mummy's boy, telling me I need to cut the apron strings and cut my own vegetables like an adult. Girlfriend hasn't answered my texts. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to leave? Edit. I do use frozen veggies. They are great for a lot of applications, but definitely not for fresh eating. I get some of the harder vegetables like butternut squash already cut up and frozen. Though frozen onions, I seem to only be able to get sliced. Update. So, girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend, came around this afternoon to collect her belongings. It was very anticlimactic, but I'm not upset that she's gone because she's shown me her true colors, though she had blamed me for it all and not apologized for her or her brother's actions. She had written a post on her Facebook on Saturday basically badmouthing me, calling me all sorts of names, and said that I was a mummy's boy and refused to cut the apron strings. I didn't see it. I don't have Facebook, but my sister, who's 28, did, and she screenshotted and sent it to me. The comment section was a dumpster fire because her friends were saying things like, "Of course he needs help, he has one arm," and telling her that she should be helping me. She has since deleted the post. After my sister saw the post, she called our uncle to let him know what had happened and suggested that he came around and changed my locks for me because she doesn't trust ex-girlfriend and wanted to make sure I was safe. As ex-girlfriend left, my uncle arrived to change the locks, which angered her. She got upset and asked if we didn't trust her. I hesitated and my uncle smirked and said no. After ex-girlfriend left, my uncle teased me about it taking so long to realize she wasn't a nice person. None of them liked her, but didn't say anything because they could see I was happy. Apparently, she and my sister loathed each other as my sister was angry about the way she was treating me. I was just too enamored to see it. My sister has also sent me the number of one of her friends, Jane, who's 29, and told me that Jane is waiting for me to text her for a date when I'm ready, and that this is the last time she's giving me the number of a friend. I've known Jane for years through my sister. She's lovely and I do like her. We get on incredibly well, but Jane was in a long-term relationship before I got with my ex. Jane works as a chef in a local hotel and has previously offered to help me with chopping because she's a good egg. So there's that. Girlfriend and her lazy freeloading brother need to stay gone. Good riddance. Don't let them back in, either of them, for any reason. These are not your people. Not the jerk, unless you let these freeloaders back in your home. Today I messed up by accidentally announcing I'm pregnant. As some of you may know, it's Father's Day tomorrow in the UK. So as tradition goes, I got my dad a Father's Day card. No harm done, right? I, being the absolute comedian I am, decided to get my dad a card aimed at grandfathers because he's old and I wanted to rub it in his face. So my day starts off normal. I visit my parents, I drop off the card and a present for the old man, and I go off on my merry way. What I didn't know was that my dad decided to open the card a day earlier and proceeded to take it completely the wrong way. Not even an hour ago, I look at my phone and I have 10 missed calls from my dad and 7 from my mom, accompanied by text messages from my mom asking if I was pregnant and if it was an accident or not. Confused, I called her and she demands to know the answer. Before I even get a word in, she just starts whooping in joy, shouting about how she can't wait to be a grandma and how my dad hasn't stood up or even moved after reading the card. I had no idea what she was talking about until she mentioned the card that said grandpa on it. They had both assumed this was my way of announcing that I was pregnant with my first. I immediately burst into laughter, barely able to get my words out. My mom, flabbergasted, trying desperately to find out why I was currently dying down the phone. I managed to get my composure and let her know that I was not in fact pregnant and was just playing a joke on my dad about his age. After explaining, my mom was understandably disappointed, but also did find the humor in the card and agreed that my dad's hair did look like the top of Mount Everest. My dad finally stood up and called me every word he could think of whilst defending his hair, stating it was a fashion statement. He did say thank you for the card though. All we needed was a signature. Wife and I recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and this story occurred during the lead up to our wedding, so some details may be fuzzy. We met a bit later in life. I'd never wanted kids. She was a single mom of twins, 12 at the time. We were friends first, but eventually it was evident this was the one, and we made plans to get married. Being a bit older, the whole traditional wedding thing wasn't for us, so we settled on a destination wedding in the Caribbean. Number one to-do list item prepping for the wedding trip is passports for the kids. While gathering the necessary documents, we learned that for minors, you need both parents to be involved. This is where the details are fuzzy, but essentially their biological dad needed to sign and notarize a form and provide a copy of his ID. We reached out numerous times, but there was always some excuse or promise that it would be taken care of next week. Clearly, this wasn't going to happen, so it was time for another tactic. The alternative to the required forms from the biological dad was to show that my wife-to-be had full and sole custody of their kids. But since they were quite young when the kids arrived, they had never formalized any sort of custody agreement. The kids had just always been in the care of their mom. So we hire an attorney, go to court, and get the custody order. Biological dad didn't even bother to show up. Finally, passport application submitted, and all is well and good, except this whole fiasco was time-consuming and expensive. So now I'm feeling petty. While there wasn't, until recently, a custody order, there was an old support order. It was a pitiful monthly amount, but after being ignored for years, the outstanding balance had grown sizable. We contacted the government agency that handles such matters, but they would need to serve him with some paperwork to proceed. We provided what we thought was his address, his mother's address, some other family addresses, but ultimately he avoided service. Time to get creative. He and the kids were friends on social media, so I started doing some investigating to see what I could learn. It turns out he's quite involved in a local recreational sports league. They have custom jerseys and the whole 9 yards. From there, it was easy enough to find the league schedule online and discover that he and the team would be at XYZ Park on next Wednesday evening at 7. This information we provided to our contact at the government agency, who at this point had also taken an extra interest in the case. The story we hear a few days later is that the county sheriff showed up to the park on the date and time we provided, stops the game, walks onto the field, and serves biological dad with the paperwork. Eventually, this leads to a warrant for non-payment, and he has to pay a lump sum, about half of what the custody process cost us, to avoid jail. It would have been so much easier to just sign the forms, man. Am I the jerk for asking my boyfriend to scuba dive again after he almost had a panic attack? Hi everyone. The boyfriend is a bit angry with me at the minute, and it's got me wondering if I was in the wrong. My boyfriend, Josh, 22 male, and I, 22 female, booked ourselves in to do a scuba diving course in Tanzania. We started it a few days ago. It involves going through scuba theory, where we were tested, and we passed, and the instructors brought us to the beach to give us a go today. I really enjoyed it. My boyfriend less so. We're both strong swimmers, which is why we decided to try it. However, once my boyfriend got under the water, he started to panic. He immediately surfaced and said he felt like a panic attack was coming on and wanted to leave. He wanted to get out of the gear and sit on the beach to wait for us, but I gently persuaded him to give it another go, because I know he would regret it later if he didn't at least try it and waste all the money that he spent. He did give it another go, but struggled and sat on the beach, so the rest of us went back out and had a great time. I joined him after and explained how much fun it was and that we saw some fish. He was really happy for me, so I asked him again if he wants to give it another go, and he just shut me down. He said that me asking before made him feel like he couldn't say no and like he didn't give it a proper go. I argued that he didn't. He didn't even make it out into deeper water to put the things we learned to use. He maintained that he didn't want to have a panic attack in the deeper water and put us in danger, and it's not my place to say whether he tried properly or not because he thinks he did. Was I the jerk? I asked out of a good place because he looked so excited with the fish. I also don't think me asking him to try again was a big deal because he's done this with other similar adventure activities we've tried and always laments he regrets not fully committing to the activity. ETA. Seen comments about me seeing him having a panic attack under the water and that it was a jerk move to ask him to do it again. He never had a panic attack. He came up before he actually had one. That's why I gently asked before he decided to sit out. You're the jerk. It doesn't matter what other activities he regrets not fully committing to. We're talking about water. Deep water. I had a panic attack while snorkeling on my honeymoon. My husband and our guide got me out of the water as fast as they could, and no one tried encouraging me to give it another go because money would be wasted. You're the jerk. Not for asking him to scuba dive again, but for later trying to argue that he didn't try hard enough. He's right, it's not your place to say. Your boyfriend did a sensible thing. Also, I do get a small sense of you rubbing it in his face that you had a great time and he missed out. I'm 27, female, and my 27-year-old boyfriend confessed to me that he has feelings for my best friend. So as the title suggests, my boyfriend, Ryan, recently expressed to me a few weeks ago that he's been feeling disconnected in our relationship and he has feelings for my best friend. A bit of backstory. We've been hanging out with my best friend, Ashley, a lot recently. Now, Ryan and Ashley have been friends since they were little, and I met Ashley in high school and have been best friends with her ever since. Ashley and Ryan didn't really talk much in high school. Ryan went to a different high school than me and Ashley. I met Ryan on our last year of high school through our mutual friend, Ashley. Ryan and I hit it off and have been together for almost 9 years. This year, Ryan and I moved in together for the first time and are in the process of buying a house together. A few weeks before our settlement date for our house, Ryan breaks down and says that he has been feeling disconnected in our relationship and that he feels there's something missing. So I asked him what he's missing in our relationship, and he mentions that he feels we don't laugh enough or have banter. He expressed that he has noticed he has more laughs with Ashley and brought up having feelings for her. Hearing this, I was definitely devastated and heartbroken and took some time to process everything. I've noticed that whenever we hang out with Ashley, I do feel like I'm sort of just third-wheeling Ashley and Ryan. They have this connection. They always laugh and they're silly and goofy together. After realizing that he has feelings for Ashley, Ryan has proposed the idea of cutting her off completely. A part of me would want that, but also a part of me feels guilty because they have been friends for a long time. I just don't know what to do. Should I tell Ashley that Ryan has feelings for her, or does Ryan need to just cut her off? First, don't buy a house. Cancel things. You need to talk to him and ask yourself if you're willing to risk being with someone who's admittedly having feelings for someone else, especially because you feel like a third wheel with them. Will you feel like a placeholder or his second choice knowing all of this? Can you live with that? Ryan needs to be honest about his feelings if he wants her, then you need to break up. And yes, Ashley should know so that she can give you space without hurting you accidentally. It does not make much sense to cut off a dear and loyal friend to keep around a disconnected boyfriend that has feelings for someone else, does it? Maybe you can get past this. Maybe you won't worry when he meets a beautiful new colleague or when you introduce him to a new friend you've made. Maybe you won't feel like a second fiddle or a third wheel or like he settled for you. But maybe it's a blessing that Ryan confessed before you entangle your life with him with a shared property. Even if he cuts her off, for him, there's still something missing from your relationship. Am I the jerk for spraying weed killer in my driveway? I'm a somewhat recently new homeowner, moved into my home last year. My driveway is gravel, and if you're not familiar with gravel driveways, during the spring and summer months, you have to spray them regularly with weed and grass killer to keep your driveway from becoming an extension of your lawn. I've been doing this about weekly since I moved in, and it's been maintaining my driveway in good condition. I noticed immediately when I moved in that the neighborhood kids will use my driveway as a cut-through to get to their friend's house. My driveway backs up to another neighbor's backyard on another street, and it's essentially a shortcut. I want to be clear that I have no issue with the kids doing this, but I was a little bit peeved that the parents didn't ask me when I moved in as a courtesy. It's clear that they've been doing this for a while with the previous owners, but I still think it would have been respectful of them to make sure it was okay with me to continue. But whatever, no harm, no foul, until today. I sprayed my driveway as usual early this afternoon. As I was finishing up, the kids cut through. I stopped spraying while they were there, waved hello, and resumed once they had cleared the area. Thought that was the end of it, but I just got off the phone with a very angry mother of one of the kids. She told me I have no right to be spraying my driveway with harsh chemicals when the kids are around. I told her I've been doing this for nearly a year now, and it's necessary for me to maintain my property. I respectfully and politely informed her that if she has an issue with her kids being exposed to these chemicals, then they can find another way to get to their friend's house that does not involve cutting through my driveway. That is where she really doubled down and had the audacity to tell me that her kids have been using my driveway as a cut-through for much longer than I've lived in the home, and I have no right to come in and change the status quo. I then said that I have no issues with her kids using the driveway, but unless she would like to purchase the home for me and start paying my mortgage, she has no right to tell me what I can and can't spray on my driveway. Then I hung up. I fear I have now made an enemy of my neighbors, and it's about to get worse, and I'm regretting not simply apologizing and sucking it up. So, am I the jerk for spraying my driveway and refusing to stop when asked by a neighbor? And now you know why the last owner sold. Not the jerk. Put up a fence so no one can cut through the yard. Not the jerk, but you have liability issues if one of them falls and gets hurt on your property. This woman seems to be the type to sue you over this. If I were you, I would put an end to this. Put up cameras and no trespassing signs. I would also consider a fence if it's allowed where you live. Not the jerk. I'll chip in $5 towards a fence. Also, most common weed killers are actually harmless to people in their store-bought form. There's a bit of a misconception about it. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.